Hello everyone, and welcome to part 2 of the Fara kind of feedback or review of the upcoming aircraft carrier Rework. Now in our first part we talked about the existing system, reasons why Wargaming has decided to make this radical shift and change, and quite frankly what, as a carrier main player, my opinions, my feelings were, and other ways of going about it, but the way we are is where we are. Part 2, which is what we're going to address today, is going to be regards to the new rework, what it is, how it plays as far as we're aware publicly, and my initial thoughts based on the video on YouTube that everyone is able to see. So with that being said, let's dive straight into it. The topics today I'm going to be covering, we're talking about the single wave, ship control, the bombing of vulnerable targets, the return flight paths and the all-in squadron mechanics, the on-use fighters and lack of assistance, single spotting areas, the AA mechanics, the health pools, the bubbles, the immunities, the no-pity timer, and national balance and flavor. These are everything that I've deemed as being interesting to me in the beginning, and mostly while we watch this upcoming gameplay, realize that all the stats, the numbers, everything like that is open to debate and balancing. This is just a core gameplay pass. Is it good? What do you think? So, if you haven't seen it yet, you get one plane wave to control. In this case, a full squadron. And a separate wing, as we see, group of 3 will drop off when you choose to attack, and you'll have a wide approach. This is your wide attack. And as you get closer, you can narrow in your drop pattern, as happens, and drop on your targets. Now, case in point, these are stationary targets, are not moving, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens when they actually are moving. However, the key problem for me is that you can only control a single squadron. You can't control more. You can't even control your ship that well, and we'll come to that in a moment. So you control a single squadron, and you attack in single waves. So a single wave goes in, does an attack, and then an additional wave would go in. And this way you can attack repeatedly with the same squadron again and again and again until you run out, and then the next plane wave or the next squadron style happens to take off from your carrier. So that implies there's a number of questions, which we'll come back to with regards to armament types. However, it is only one squadron to begin with. We only get one flyer. Now that is to mitigate scouting over the entire map and kind of infinite map presence and all those type of mechanics. That's fine, and we have different speed mechanics that we can adjust, as we can see on the left, and we have a health pool bar on the right, and we can see one plane graphically is slightly damaged, and we see the torpedoes underneath the planes, and we've got the flaps and everything. Visually it looks fantastic. The AA is spectacular. You know, there's certain elements, if you go through a cloud you get a little bit damaged, and all these things look very, very interesting. Okay, it's quite something to be said. However, why only a single squadron? Why not 2 squadrons? Probably because it's too much to micro. The Wargaming is focusing on you control one ship normally that does one thing, and the camera doesn't jump around. So therefore, we want you to control one squadron as well. And therefore, you don't need to jump back and forth. We don't want that to happen. Which is a shame, because Total War Arena, another sister game of Wargaming, is RTS based, but at the very least it has 3 groups and limited to only 3 groups, but that works just fine. And at the very least, we're going to move on here to hull control. We can't control our ship. So right now, if we look down the minimap, our ship is moving towards some islands. Well, we are dropping with one plane and we have return groups. So it's going to get very cluttered on the minimap with all the planes flying back and forth, but I'm sure they can fix that. Plus, the planes on the return path are going to give away the location of your carrier, but Sub-Octavian said they'll also look at that. But ship control. There are 3 reasons why I would want dedicated ship control. At the moment, ship control is only done by the tactical map, meaning autopilot. My problem with that is that if I want to dodge incoming attacks, incoming planes, I don't want to rely on autopilot to tell the ship to turn left and right in a fidgety way. If I'm trying to sail through narrow islands or get my ship perfectly positioned behind an island or into a cap, I want fine micro control. Or if I'm being shot at by a destroyer or a battleship, I want to angle in such a way that my armored flight deck, in this case the midway, can mitigate the damage. Or maybe if I'm being shot at by a Worcester or Des Moines, I want to wiggle my backside so that I can take direct control of my ship and I can dodge incoming fire, because I'm not going to have my aircraft carrier at the back line on the 1 line or the J line or that something. No, it's going to be somewhere reasonably placed, but that's not to say you sometimes don't get surprised. So if you are under attack, I want to be able to micro my ship. So even if it's just one plane squadron and one ship control, that's 2 points of control that you can go back and forth between. And you can already do that in the current system. For Wargaming to take that away and then be extremely hesitant to reintroduce it is unacceptable. It is absolutely unacceptable. It must be in the final game version. So, now we look at another thing Wargaming mentioned. They want to remove the high amount of alpha damage, the massive strike, which is why the entire squadron doesn't attack with all 12 torpedoes at once. We'll see that 3 break off and attack individually. Now in this case it's dive bombers, so we don't attack with all the dive bombers, we do it in waves. And this means that you're going to get more attempts at the pass. Case in point here, this is not a moving target. I mean, if you're trying to bomb a highly maneuverable target, such as destroyers turning hard, and you're going into this sort of raised up, down, sort of just, dive bomb thing, visually it looks spectacular. And you can only imagine that you've got these little kind of UI elements of the ice in the top, and then imagine the Jericho trumpet for the Stuka dive bombers, siren wailing away. It's all very, very impressive. But can you actually hit the thing? Core gameplay mechanic-wise, remember the Graf Zeppelin had its 9-second timer, which took forever to hit anything, was extremely difficult, and the ship just needed to barely turn left and then barely turn right, and it could dodge everything. Well, these are stationary targets that Wargaming has shown us. What happens when something's actually moving and actually attacking? That's hard. So if you can't do a lot of alpha damage and you're dependent on attacking multiple times, can you actually hit them? That's the thing. And if you're doing dot damage, fires and floods, well then we need to hit them with dive bombers and we need to hit them with torpedo bombers. This isn't a problem with torpedo bombers. If you go back to the Ranger or the Lexington, and I'll go back here for a brief moment and we'll look at the torpedo bomber strike again. This single torpedo bomber strike that's coming in, okay? It's coming in from one direction. Now this is a Yamato, pretty much one of the largest ships in the game, going in a straight line, not changing its speed. So he's making it look fairly easy here to hit to ship. And if you're going against battleships, alright, I understand that. However, you need to be able to defend yourself and attack all targets in some measure. Maybe not catastrophic damage, but even if it's like hit them once for a flooding or a fire, reduce damage, but some sort of negating effect that you can then attack again and again and again. Well, if you're only coming in from one direction, circa very much like the current Ranger or Lexington, it's actually very easy for the Yamato to turn in, sometimes possibly turn out, reduce the speed, or mitigate that initial attack. And you think, well, you can attack again and again and again. And like, I guess you can, and then that way, although maybe he dodges 2 torps and takes 1, maybe takes a flooding, then you attack him again after a damage con, and then you can do perma-flooding, and that's how you get your damage. You work on a target over time. I can only imagine that would really cheese off the enemy battleship being attacked constantly and not having any support, but we'll come back to that support element. However, what happens if it's a more maneuverable target? What happens if it's something like a Khabarovsk that's very fast and a Russian destroyer with engine boost? What happens if it is a British cruiser that's got high maneuverability? How do you even hit them approaching from one direction? I mean, they're so maneuverable that if you can't use the classic hammer and anvil approach, attacking from 2 sides, cross-dropping, that type of thing, to at least guarantee a hit. I'm not saying the hit needs to be devastating, but if you can't do that under this current game mode, because how quickly can you attack with one wing, and how quickly can you attack with another? Because if we look very carefully, the torpedoes are actually, in this view, exceptionally fast. See how far back this player is dropping, and then if we see the torpedo speed, these are actually extremely quick torpedoes. I know how fast torpedoes are from muscle memory when I play the game. Those are faster than Kagatorps, and Kagatorps are really fast at 56. So, is it even possible, if the torpedoes are so quick, can you like drop from behind, have the ship getting chopped from torpedoes from behind, so it doesn't want to turn left and right, and then you can cross-drop with another wave attack? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But my concern is, how do you even attack ships when they're turning and maneuverable? Because again, case in point, this destroyer is not moving and using high explosive. Then we have to take into consideration armor piercing. Will there be armor piercing bombs? Now currently they're not in this game mechanic, but will they finally balance armor piercing bombs so that they are somewhat reasonable and not absolutely stupidly overpowered and delete things? Because that would be preferential. If you could do an aimed strike on an aimed part of the ship into a citadel, that would be better than just left clicking. Which then brings us on to the next point. Can we finally choose our loadout selection? Because right now we see these are just high explosive dive bombers because we only have one option. I want the option to have torpedo bombers and dive bombers on my carrier, and I want the option to choose between normal torpedoes, deep water torpedoes, high explosive dive bombers, and armor piercing dive bombers. And okay, we can only control one wave at a time, but I want to be able to control or pick before the next wave turns off. Actually, I want torpedo bombers ready next, and I want them with normal torpedoes. If you're going to do it, now is the time to do it, Wargaming. And then another caveat here is if I pause this very briefly, we'll see that our ship has beached on an island and he can't control. What happens when you beach on an island and you can't control your ship, Wargaming? If I can't manual control my ship, how do I reverse? How do I dodge? How do I go through islands? That seems kind of flawed. And then also, the next part is that this is the dive bomber group here on the minimap, and we have a return path. Every wing that attacks immediately starts returning to the mother carrier from the squadron. But that is visible to every enemy ship, so they can see where you are. They just have to follow the breadcrumb trail of returning planes to find the carrier. So yes, Sub-Octavian in the video said that they would look into that and try and change it because they don't want that to happen. It's an understandable thing, and we're only looking at core gameplay here, but that is a core gameplay aspect, and it's stupid, and it needs to be somehow addressed. Now, he did mention the planes would go really high and they would disappear or something, and okay. And another caveat we want to talk about here is that carriers no longer have an ammunition count, similar to all ships in game. You're not limited by shells, so now we're no longer limited by planes, so you can keep playing throughout the game. So it kind of dumbs the game down in that there isn't plane conservation and micro, but honestly, it does make it more fun and arcadey because you can just spam your shells. I mean, if there was a limited ammunition count, the Worcester would run out of ammunition in the first 10 seconds, same with the Minotaur. So yeah, okay, fine, you can just keep firing daka daka daka. And it's the same with torpedoes and reloads on ships. They have like one salvo and then that'll be it for ship torpedoes. So I can understand that, and unlimited planes is kind of cool, you know, because you can keep staying in the game. If you're a Langley or a Hosho, you're not deplaned, you're not punished. It's more enjoyable rather than historically accurate. So I'm fine with unlimited planes. So in that sense, where is the logic in the returning of planes? Like, should I even care? Other than them showing where my ship is, do I even care anymore about the return path? Like, when planes are on a return path, can they be AA and shot down? Are they cheap and easy kills for the enemy that I don't want to give away? Maybe I don't want to give them plane kills. Maybe I don't want to reward them with plane kills. But if I can't control the planes on the return path to my ship, I certainly don't want them giving my position away. And then the problem is that, again, the return path, do they just disappear? So I fly out, I bomb, and then I don't care about the return element. That seems kind of dumbed down because a certain element of gameplay that was fun and engaging and certainly had a skill element on the old system was that you had to be careful how you approach the target, how you bomb them, which is unchanged here in the action gameplay, except you also had to be careful on the return path. But the reason they are taking away control of the return path is probably to stop you scouting with your returning bombers. So it's kind of like a middle ground that they're going with here. I can understand that, but it needs more work. It needs a more definitive answer here because it feels a bit dumbed down with all the control. And then losing your entire plane wave apparently increases the prep time. So apparently once the first wave, once you've either told the planes to return or dropped all the bombs, then you can control another squadron while the other ones are returning. So that's kind of cool. Now, this battleship is being attacked by these fighters and he's getting a lot of harassment. He's being bombed, he's being harassed, and he's like, I need support. Now, he could use his own anti-air. However, the anti-air, which we'll come to in a brief moment, the mechanics, isn't going to shoot down all these planes. So normally this is where he'd ask the friendly fighter from the carrier, friendly carrier player, to send friendly fighters to stop the bombers. But that is not in this focus. The focus from Wargaming, said specifically by Sub-Octavian, is that all of what we are aiming for in the action gameplay is airplanes versus ships. Bombing focused control. There will not be fighters that are controllable. There will be an unusability and some ability that we have not yet seen, and they have not shown us probably because it's not ready, and I can only imagine it's this T consumable here. However, the fighters work where you are. It's unclear about how he said it, but it doesn't feel like you can summon fighters, which I don't like the idea of just summoning magical fighters, and then they approach. But what do they do? If I can't control the fighters or move them in a particular area or do something with them, what's the point of them? If I can't then, like, do I click on a friendly ship and then summon fighters so that friendly fighters summon at that friendly ship? Is that how it works? Or are they summoned next to my bombers? Or are they summoned next to my hull carrier? Because if I can't do any form of support where I'm protecting my teammates, it feels kind of dumb as a carrier. Yeah, sure, a carrier's attacking, but at the same time, he should somewhat be able to help out and be friendly. Like, there could be a long cooldown on the summon fighter ability, so maybe you bait it on one ship and go attack another, but at least you tried to be supportive. This lack of team play while I understand was quite unforgiving with the current old gameplay where fighter micro and dancing and exit strafing and all of that type of stuff, and then that combined with AA made it very difficult to bomb in certain tiers, and especially with certain divisions. I get that, right? Midway and divisions with AA ships. Right, I understand that how difficult it is when you have to fight enemy fighters and they're going for a bomber focus, but until we see more about this fighter mechanic thing, it's a big concern for me for core gameplay, because I want to be able to support my ships that are being attacked in some way other than just having passive AA from my own ship. So that's an area that I have kind of an issue with. Moving on then, spotting a single area. As we noticed, when anti-air is firing, and I'll go back here again, we'll see this is the anti-air firing. It's very impressive. These black puffs are like medium large caliber AA, and they're kind of like dead zones. If you fly your plane into these dark puffs, you'll take damage. And we can see down here under this work in progress, we have health bars. Planes are giving on fire when they're low health, they're smoking, they're taking damage, and then the player, that is you, has to maneuver your planes to dodge these puffs so that your planes don't die. Now if that's medium long range AA and it's a density of these sort of AA flak clouds that's very dangerous to fly into, that would also mean that defensive fire's panic effect would change as subbed by Son of Octavian, and it would probably, and take this as a work in progress, increase the number of flaks so that it's a very dense cloud and very difficult to maneuver and you can't really approach something. Plus, they mentioned that the AA system, you can have it so that, similar to like turning main guns, you can have all anti-aircraft guns focusing one particular area to put up the maximum density of anti-air. That is cool. We could use that on the old system. The change from plane health from all alive to all dead, an RNG-ness, to one of health with, a UI interface showing me, how much my planes are damaged and smoke trails and that type of stuff, and interactive AA. Fantastic. We could have absolutely wanted that. We need that in the current system rather than this new one. It's a great rework. It's a great idea. It's definitely been needed and asked for. But here's the next question. On a ship like a Shimakaze that you're hunting for, the problem with the scouting is that you can scout everyone at once. But one of the other problems is that with scouting, you can scout one particular ship all the time. So I don't need to drop all my bombs. I can try attack him and I can maybe save the last squadron. The last squadron is more maneuverable, easier to dodge with, and the number of flak coming from a destroyer is going to be quite limited. So in the old system, if you were inside a ship's AA bubble, long range or otherwise, even an AA cruiser, eventually you would lose planes because it was really just a numbers game, a percentage chanced RNG, and there was even a pity timer on like super low AA ships that eventually you would lose a plane. Well, with this new system of dodging AA, I can keep something perma-spotted because I will never lose a plane because I'm always dodging the flak. So how does that work, wargaming? Like, if you don't want me perma-spotting an enemy ship, but I can perma-spot them because I just fly around all and dodge all these AA, that doesn't seem like you've solved the problem, but I guess you'll come and fix that at a later point. Another element which wargaming talked upon is having different armament types. How do you balance national flavor? 1 second here. So these are somewhat like Typhoon fighters with rockets, and that's kind of cool. It's a different game. It's a different attack mode. It's the easiest to aim with. You sort of just kind of point, click. It fires some awesome kind of rockets. You do a lot of saturation module damage. You get some, high explosive, large chance of fire. It's all kind of cool. It's all very interesting. So, how do you balance national traits? Well, they can do different plane armaments. We've had dive bombers. Maybe certain ones have better AP mechanics. Some have better HE, better splash. Maybe there'll be different drop patterns. Some have rockets, some might not have rockets, but each bomb type needs to have some sort of tangible or beneficial thing, because right now, torpedo bombers are all the rage because they are the easiest thing to hit on target, unless, of course, you're tier 10, where armor-piercing bombs are good because the drop reticle is so tight and accurate and you can just absolutely delete cruisers. It's hilarious, and that is Wargaming's own fault for unable to balance their thing, but we talked about that in part 1, so... Moving on, national balance is interesting because it's no longer locked in by hull, and they no longer lock themselves into this sort of plane management squadron system, 222 or 312 or all these different type of things. No, it's single wave control. So now we can balance, very similar to how we balance ships in game. We can balance plane speed, the acceleration that you might have, a kind of a plane boost. Maybe the French fighters get an engine boost, so they go even faster and they can dodge or they can get around. We can have health pools, we can have armor on the planes, we can have armament, you know. So there's lots of different ways that we can balance. And also, interestingly enough, said by Octavian, they're looking at Japanese and they are looking at American plane balancing that they can work between. Oh, you just see that? All those planes flew into an 80 flak bubble and a whole bunch of them died. That's kind of cool. But apparently we can only stay at the current height. We can't go up or down in alternate altitude. And also you fly over terrain automatically here, so you don't crash in that sense. But they also mentioned, other than Japanese and American, they're doing a third carrier race. They're balancing a third nation. Now, I mean, I know he's playing safe, but that's British carriers. The rework, I'm telling you right now, they are working on British carriers. Now that is, I don't know any information that you don't know, but who else is it going to be? There is no other nation in World War II that had a fully fledged line. They're so working on British carriers. If they do some French carrier premium, I'll be so cheesed off. You know, it is going to be British carriers, so it's cool. The rework's going to take a long time. We're only at the general concept stage, but it's good to see that they are working on a fresh ship line. However, how the ship lines turn out and how they do the rebalancing and all that, also up for subject and debate. So there's a lot to be said and there's a lot to take on board with this rework. And is it going to be good? Probably. Is the gameplay enjoyable? Yes, but there are problems. There are some issues that we'll have to go into. Now, you, a player, when you get your hands on it eventually, the super testers, the community contributors, they'll all get to play it and they'll try it out and they'll give feedback, and Wargaming will iterate on this game mode. And then when things become out of NDA, I can share more details with you, because there are some elements that I'm holding back because it's a very strict NDA. And that being said, that is the end of this gameplay review as we've seen. Hopefully it's been somewhat informative for you, more than what just Octavian said. It has a great deal of potential. I just have fears that the gameplay may become stale. Fly a plane out, go out, drop some bombs, World of Warplanes 2.0 all over again. It's very enjoyable for the first 10 minutes and then it gets boring and stale. It's not got the full flesh of interest. Now, that being said, this is just core gameplay, it's initial installment, it's initial setup, there'll be iterations upon itself, so it could get better, there could be different ways of playing it, but we'll see. And that's it. I'll catch you next time, guys. When I get more information, I'll let you know. And until then, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.